Hello and welcome back to TechInsights, the Chip Observer. Home to all things semiconductor related, covering industry trends, innovations, and key developments. So, this episode, I want you to imagine something for me. A company building a smartphone. Now, that's not strange. I know, standard stuff in today's world. But here's the twist. There's no apps, no tools, no other centralized interface, besides a single supported, integrated, generative AI. You know, it's 2026, and we're way past science fiction here. These days, we're seeing technological innovations on the daily. But still, the idea of handing your phone over to a fully integrated AI still seems a bit strange, or at least to some of us it does. And to others, it may be downright concerning. The concept isn't new, of course, but there's been several articles in the past few months touting just this. Sort of a resurgence on this idea. Some in particular discussing OpenAI's pick of MediaTek over Qualcomm for its first smartphone, and OpenAI reportedly working on a mobile chipset. And even internally, in a recently published piece here at TechInsights, Wayne Lamb pointed out that the industry still hasn't settled on where AI truly scales best, highlighting how companies like Google, for example, are experimenting with laptop-based AI experiences, while others continue pushing toward mobile-first strategies. There's an interesting tension emerging in how the tech industry is thinking about AI. On one side, there's this idea that AI belongs everywhere, ambient, invisible. And on the other, there's a growing realization that maybe AI needs a dedicated home, something centralized, personal, always with you. And that uncertainty sets the stage for what might be a very deliberate move. Because OpenAI appears to be placing a bet on the smartphone, suggests an AI-first device, one that's built not around apps, but around a single AI agent interface. That means a system designed to be continuous, context-aware, and deeply, if not fully, integrated into how we already live. And yeah, maybe that's the key. Not changing behavior, but embedding itself directly inside it. I'm sure some of you can already see where this is going. But still, let's start with a little background. Why the smartphone still matters. I recently had the chance to sit down to an analyst roundtable, examining one of the most consequential bets in technology today. The following is a chat between Radu Trandafir, Ken Hires, and Jeff Matthews, all specialists in their fields from RF and hardware systems engineering, strategic market analysis, and business architecture, and all with varying opinions on this topic. So, is the smartphone the right vessel for ambient AI? Or are we at the edge of something entirely new? Let's begin with one voice cutting straight to the tension. Radu, if you will, please.
Reality is that smartphones are the ideal device for personal AI. Not only do they have the compute power, including the boost in storage they got lately, but they also have the neural processing units, and most important of all, are designed to keep you connected.
So why smartphones? OpenAI could have built anything. Earbuds, smart glasses, a dedicated AI device. But it seems they're choosing the smartphone. It also seems the answer would start with a simple, powerful question. Where do users actually live? For that, I'd like to defer to Ken Hires for some direction.
So the question is, why would OpenAI be making a smartphone? There's lots of different devices they could be making. And it really comes down to, where are users? What are they going to be using AI on?
It clearly seems that the scale argument is unambiguous. No other device category comes close.
Smartphones are the single most popular consumer electronic device ever.
That's a bold statement. Accurate, but still bold.
And smartphones are going to remain a large-scale device category for years. So, if we think that ChatGPT, it's approaching 1 billion weekly users, a hardware product for daily use that fits OpenAI's ambition to reach more consumers is the smartphone.
So is it about scale only, or is control a factor?
It's a control argument. Really, only by fully controlling the underlying permissions on the operating system can a a full comprehensive AI service be provided. And that's why the OpenAI and other AI giants are entering the mobile phone market.
So scale is a big part of it, but the deeper driving force seems to be control. And right now, OpenAI operates on someone else's platform, and that has a ceiling.
Currently on iOS and Android today, OpenAI is I guess you would call them a tenant. They don't own the device. They don't own the relationship with the consumer. And OpenAI wants to be the landlord.
But this goes beyond scale control. There's also the data dimension we need to factor in. The smartphone isn't just a communications device. It's a continuously updating model of your life. And to get a more analytical perspective, we turn to Jeffrey Matthews to get his breakdown on OpenAI's plans. Jeff, if you please.
OpenAI is viewing smartphones as the most important opportunity to establish its leadership in AI. Smartphones are central to our digital lives and continuously capture the real-time data and the user behavior.
Essentially, this enables AI systems to anticipate user needs even before they're expressed, and furthermore, provide the perfect delivery system.
Smartphones provide the platform for mass adoption, allowing OpenAI to scale daily and weekly active usage and embed AI into everyday interactions.
So there you have it. 3 arguments all pointing the same direction: scale, context, and control. The smartphone isn't just the most popular device ever built. It's the only device that can give OpenAI what it actually needs. And that means the conversation shifts from why to how, and more specifically, what has to change at the chip level for this vision to work. I mentioned MediaTek and Qualcomm earlier, and OpenAI's decision, choosing one over the other. I think we need to look at MediaTek's advantages. That isn't just about specs, but about alignment. A partner willing to customize around OpenAI's specific system requirements, rather than protecting its own AI roadmap.
In my opinion, OpenAI is going to whomever is willing to accommodate their system and product-specific needs. Qualcomm and Apple, and we can add here Samsung, maybe even Google, have their own GenAI interests to protect. Continuing to evolve the machine learning AI capability in their mobile platform is a vital necessity for MediaTek too, and not just for the application processor, but also for the basement processor to continue to drive the air interface optimization.
Most users will never think about what's inside their phone, but the chip architecture determines everything. What the AI can do locally, how fast it responds, how little battery it burns. The shift happening now is fundamental, from designing silicon around gaming benchmarks to designing it around continuous intelligence.
So the new MediaTek chip is tipped on focusing on improving AI workloads rather than pure smartphone performance metrics. This is a meaningful architectural shift. You're designing silicon around continuous interference, not just gaming benchmarks. So for MediaTek, this is really a significant credibility moment.
I think we need to reiterate that OpenAI's chip selection isn't just a procurement decision. It's a strategic signal, and it puts one of the industry's biggest incumbents in an uncomfortable position.
OpenAI appears to think that a customized version of MediaTek's Dimensity 9600 is the chip of choice. And that's kind of a blow to Qualcomm's premium positioning. And it sort of puts Qualcomm in an awkward spot.
So what are we looking at in the long term? What and who determines or defines the next steps?
So longer term, whoever cracks the formula for efficient, continuous, context-aware, on-device AI inference, they're going to win the next decade of mobile silicon.
So that's the silicon story. A race from performance metrics to intelligence metrics. But that's just a part of it, because under the hood, everything is changing. And for most users, the change that'll matter most isn't the chip, it's the apps, or rather what replaces them. The app is the fundamental unit of the smartphone era. Billions of people tap icons dozens of times a day. What if that interaction that models the tap, the switch, or the swipe is already obsolete? What if it's replaced by the orchestrator concept?
The widgets, as I see and use them in my Apple devices, are the precursor to the agent you speak of. In the end, there will be orchestrators, which will manage several agents or even apps to accomplish a suite of tasks.
And what would an orchestrator actually look like in practice? Say, for example, a message request that routes itself to the optimal channel based on constraints.
I can see myself saying, no, instructing the personal AI residing on whatever device platform may be the case. I need to send a message to my friend Johnny. It's for his eyes only and should reach him immediately with delivery confirmation, in which case the orchestrator will analyze the time of day, the known available means of contacting my friend, and combined with the other constraints I placed in my request, it may end up dialing my friend's phone number.
As examples go, that does seem like a lot of details or options to include. But I think what Radu trying to illustrate is that the orchestrator manages apps rather than replacing them. Now, that raises an uncomfortable question for every developer who built their business on the current model.
Rather than saying the apps will be replaced by agents, I think we'll have these orchestrators managing and coordinating several applications which can be called upon to execute a suite of tasks. In my example, a communication orchestrator will take care of all my communication needs.
So now here's a big question. All those nice apps now running on my phone, made by independent developers, are they going to willingly surrender their IP and provide sockets or APIs or whatever for the orchestrator to manage and control them?
Apps aren't just interfaces, they're relationships, they're legal agreements, they're data boundaries. So, getting every service to expose itself to an AI agent layer, that's a huge coordination problem.
As a coordination problem, the barrier isn't technical, it's structural. Ken, let me ask, pushing past the theory of it, can we show exactly how transformative this shift would feel to an everyday user?
So I guess one of the promises here is with a AI agent as the heart of the smartphone, as is it the end of apps? And I don't know whether that's really realistic. The vision itself is compelling, but there are barriers. So the idea is that instead of opening each separate app for each task, a user wants to do an activity, say booking a trip. They ask the phone to plan the trip, book the ride, message contacts to coordinate the plans, update a schedule, summarize the receipts when you get back.
So what's the realistic path forward? Obviously not a clean break, but maybe a gradual disappearance. Apps don't die. Maybe they go underground.
Apps could become an invisible infrastructure, that AI orchestrates. And I think that's probably the current, near midterm outcome that we're looking at.
So apps become an invisible infrastructure that AI orchestrates. That's possibly the new user experience story. Now we need to understand the business story. Because every paradigm shift eventually comes down to money. How do you monetize intelligence at scale? I don't think they could use the same models that monetize hardware. It looks like OpenAI is proposing something fundamentally different. Usage-based compute, like your phone bill, but for thinking.
OpenAI is looking beyond the traditional subscription strategy and going after the usage-based model, which is the key differentiator in how AI platforms operate. transforming the smartphone experience into a model that charges based on compute.
So the suggestion is that usage will be measured on tokens, consumed for every complex action executed by the AI agents in the daily workflow. Suffice it to say, the comparison to Apple here is instructive, but also a warning. Apple's ecosystem model took 15 years to mature, but now it looks like OpenAI may be attempting to compress that timeline dramatically.
Apple relies on traditional hardware lock-ins and App Store model. On the other hand, OpenAI will function on a usage-based compute model, one that is predictable and sustainable because it resembles cost much like the utility bill, one that will be metered for the amount of intelligence and convenience.
But strategically, we need to be very candid about what this model requires to work. The services have to earn their price every day at every renewal.
The subscription plus device model can work. Apple's proved that, but it requires a compelling device that people buy, and the services have to be good enough for people to keep coming back and paying for it. So, I guess you would say that OpenAI does have the services story. Certainly on the device side, though, it's unproven. The risk is that they could create a niche product for AI enthusiasts rather than a mass market platform.
And on the consumer side, there's a hard reality about the pricing model that nobody wants to say out loud.
Making the consumer pay for both the GenAI services and the added expanded network usage is a pill hard to swallow by consumers, which even today question the benefits of Wi-Fi 7 and 5G.
Usage-based, compute as a utility, subscription plus hardware. The model is clear, in theory. The question is consumer adoption. And that brings us to the ultimate stress test. Who actually wins in this new order and who gets disrupted out of existence? Let's be direct. Start with the most vulnerable app developers. Not all of them, but the ones whose entire value proposition is doing one thing really well.
The most vulnerable part of the value chain is going to be the app developers. These are at least the ones whose apps are single-purpose utility tools.
Disruption extends beyond the apps, and the agent model could erode the competitive moat of some of the most powerful companies on the internet.
But this model is going to directly erode the competitive advantages of traditional internet giants. We think about how, for instance, Google search, they dominate partially because people open a browser. If an agent just answers a question, the browser doesn't open.
So yeah, there's possible negative impacts. But there's also going to be some winners. An agent-driven ecosystem would create a very specific demand surge, and it seems to flow directly to silicon.
The key beneficiaries of this shift will be the chip vendors that supply the hardware that enables the on-device intelligence and compute for the context-aware AI models. The AI agent will also increase the demand for high-performing processing and sensing components, so semiconductor chips will become the most critical component of the smartphone ecosystem, shifting the focus from a software-driven experience to an agentic experience.
Okay, I know the concepts discussed so far may be a bit to take on, and from the OEMs and OS providers' perspectives, this becomes a more nuanced picture. The threat is real but slow-moving. Incumbent advantages in privacy and reputation may buffer the disruption for longer than the optimists expect.
I'd say for chip vendors, this is actually an opportunity, obviously for MediaTek in this case, but and Qualcomm as co-development partners, they could benefit from long-term replacement demand. OEMs who make undifferentiated Android smartphones, the really vanilla things, I'd say they're kind of vulnerable.
And a critical counterweight needs to be factored in. Obviously, OpenAI won't achieve transformative disruption overnight. But the current industry leaders and established market players aren't idly standing by. The incumbents aren't waiting.
The incumbent smartphone OEMs have three main advantages: a known reputation for high-quality phone hardware and their ecosystem, proven personal privacy and data ownership, and last but not least, consumers' ability to choose whichever Gen AI solution they deem suitable for their needs and purse.
And on timing, the realism check. Transformative change is rarely as fast as the hopes of the optimist might forecast.
I sincerely doubt that OpenAI's device or phone, as may be the case, will generate in 2028 the transformative evolution. I'm trying to stay away from big words here, AI agnostic being, equivalent to Apple's introduction of the first iPhone in 2007.
So winners and losers are emerging. Developers of single-purpose apps face existential disruption. Chip vendors are entering a golden era. OS providers face a slow-motion threat. And undifferentiated OEMs seem to be the most exposed. So now we've covered the why, the how, the what, and the who. We should now ask the ultimate question. Is OpenAI really building a smartphone, or is it attempting something larger? This is the question that changes how you evaluate everything else.
I'd argue that this is genuinely an attempt to redefine the dominant paradigm. Although I think that there's a pretty realistic chance that they're going to fall short.
So the platform bet framing is the critical insight. Success won't be defined with market share. It'll look like industry adoption.
So success in 5 years probably doesn't look like OpenAI outselling Apple. It's more like the concept itself that wins. If by 2031 every major phone maker has been forced to redesign their UX around an agent layer rather than an app grid, I'd say OpenAI would have won, even if they'd only sold a few tens of millions of units.
It's apt to say the smartphone didn't kill the PC overnight. It just made the PC feel like the past. But execution discipline in hardware is brutal, and history can be unforgiving.
And that's kind of the playbook that OpenAI is going for here. The question is whether OpenAI has the patience, the capital, and I think most important, the execution discipline to play a really long game in hardware.
And history provides two instructive reference points for what happens when ambitious companies try to redefine the smartphone.
Google, I mentioned them earlier, they're great smartphone. They haven't set the world on fire. They're just an example of, perhaps best in breed for Android. I look at some others that have tried to redefine the smartphone game. Amazon's Fire Phone, my God. Okay, I'll give you two examples. Google, great, but hasn't set the world on fire. Amazon, fire, dumpster fire. None of them have had a level of AI capacity as OpenAI is planning for here.
And the clearest test of whether OpenAI's approach will endure, I think it could come down to a single principle.
One thing I'm very sure of, any solution that places the user in control, that gives you agency over your personal data and safeguards your privacy and not the Gen AI LLM in the cloud, will win over devices tightly tethered to the cloud.
So maybe it's genuinely different this time, but I'd argue that the outcome is far from certain.
Some final thoughts. It's more than just devices. It's about a gateway between human and artificial intelligence. The trade-offs are clear. Convenience versus control. Personalization versus privacy. Utility versus dependency. Who ultimately wins and on whose terms remains uncertain. But the direction is not. I want to thank our analysts for sharing their thoughts on these ever-evolving innovations. None of this would have been possible without their research, notes, and insights. Please note, the contents discussed here today were for informational purposes only and don't reflect views or opinions of the institutions or organizations mentioned. Again, this episode was only a glance at ongoing and broader analysis available at our TechInsights platform. We invite you to visit our site at techinsights.com and sign up for free to become a guest user and access these complimentary reports and videos. One final quick disclaimer. Although this episode was enhanced using AI, the script, the editing, and production were all realized by a real human being human. So, as always, be sure to follow us, subscribe for updates, and explore more in-depth analysis at techinsights.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay insightful.